All right, let's quickly look at some of the issues sometimes encountered when people are trying to replace a pump without making sure that the replacement pump is matching their plumbing and the previous pump model. So let's say somebody needs to replace an Executive 56 here, okay? Here's what they got, Executive 56 frame, so it's got the waterway wet end. And there's Executive 56. They find 56 frame Ultimax in the same specs for a good deal and believe that it's going to work as a replacement. Okay, we can see a couple issues here already. Look at these wet end differences. Now, remember, this is the intake pulling the water in. This is what's discharging the water, moving it through the plumbing and through the jets. So we need to line up that intake, right? So if we're lining up that intake, we probably don't have a lot of flexibility in the plumbing. We're going horizontal. This needs to connect straight and make a good seal. Now, even if a pump sits too high or too low, yes, we can raise one up if needed. But even so, let's say that we do match the intake. Obviously, we need to make sure that matches. Well, what's gonna happen with the discharge now? Well, here's a couple problems. We've lined up the intake, okay? Now let's look at a couple issues already. First of all, height difference, right? So again, let's say we did raise that up. So we're going to make up for the difference here. Maybe we put something under here to raise this up and see if we can make the discharge connect. Well, then what does that do to the intake? Okay, so now the intake might not be as level and connected, and there goes our tape measure. Here is the bigger issue that people generally run into though in trying to match these. So let's look at something else here and see if you can notice it. We'll try to get it centered a little bit more. Now, let's say we've got these both lined up with the intake correctly, but and maybe even the discharge height we can line up somehow. In this case, I don't think we ever could if we look at the connection points here. But let's look at the difference between the center point of the intake and where the discharge will connect, okay? So like, let's go center point here. So center point of this intake, and we'll go to the first point where the threading is going to connect. So center point of the intake, gotta come up a little bit more here with the tape measure. Center point's about, we see kind of a line right there. So center point's about there. So our first contact there with the threading is about 1.5 inches. Now it's a lot easier here. We can just kind of trace the center point here, right here. So center point is there. I'm gonna take a look right about there. Look at our issue here is gonna be, it's hard to tell, but we're connecting that first connection point right there at about the 1 inch mark. So even if we were able to line up the intake, we might have a 1/2 inch or maybe 3/4 inch of issue between the spread between the discharge. And that's something we run into. People buy, this is a great pump, and people buy this pump from, you know, Easy Spa Parts, and then it's not going to line up well for a replacement for this waterway.